Campers, it's me, Ari Lehman, the first Jason Voorhees. From Friday the 13th, I'm here with AJ, and he's got the juiciest slice ready for you. It's dripping with blood. Jason never dies.
What makes a horror film kill memorable, terrific, even in some way profound or poignant? Let's explore. Thanks for checking this out. If anything about it trips your fancy, please like, subscribe, and share.
Yes.
Without further ado,
You've just got to show.
Suzie, you've got a one-track mind. I already told you, I don't know anybody.
Yeah, but you will after tonight.
That's what I'm afraid of.
a gathering of like-minded individuals, a by-invitation-only party of sorts, is being assembled to go on in the mall's furniture store after closing, but not everyone is keen on attending, when it would mean being set up on a blind date.
Hey, would I set you up with a slime dog or something? No way, babe.
Suzie playing matchmaker lets us know she's that friend, the facilitator.
It is, babe, isn't it?
Come on, take it while it's hot.
The one with the drive to get things done so the festivities, sure to be totally copacetic, go down no matter what.
Attention shoppers, Park Plaza will be closing in 10 minutes.
The night's revelry coincides with the implementation of a new state-of-the-art security system.
The Protector 101 series robots.
Their deployment led to pertinent questions.
What do your machines do besides kill criminals?
Well, first of all, Doctor, the Protectors do not kill.
The mall staffers who turned up for the unveiling certainly recognized the applications.
I wonder if they kill cockroaches.
They could probably be programmed to.
Never in the history of weaponizing robots has anything ever gone kerflooey. The 3 laws of robotics saw to that.
Close-range sleep darts fired from here and here can knock a man out in less than 30 seconds.
During the Protector shift, the mall itself becomes a fortress due to
The steel security doors, which are time-locked from midnight till dawn.
So by all rights, nothing could possibly go wrong. Still, since there was no way to plan for the possibility of the existence of lightning storms, the multi-million-dollar system has no safeguards to prevent the circuits from getting fried out. No contingency plan to stop just enough electroshock therapy from getting through to rattle the mainframe and make the maybe ironically named Protectors go murderbot. The haywire droids circumvent HR by taking grievances with their technicians right to the source, solving all issues in perpetuity. These robots prove less pugilistic and more gladiatorial. Of course, the revelers have no idea the mall has morphed from a fun zone into a Coliseum death trap, and it's only a matter of time before all that overlaps into their good time.
Yeah, tonight you are going to shake that ultra-wally image of yours once and for all.
But I like my image. I don't want to shake it. Look, you guys just have fun.
Suzie's major concern surrounds getting Ferdy, who has a family connection to the furniture store, on board. Not because he's put up any resistance to them partying it up in the store, but because she's convinced he'll hit it off with her friend.
Ferdy Mizell, meet Allison Parks.
Love is in the air, the sparks are flying, and Cupid's arrow arcs right into the young man's heart.
Hi.
Hi.
With Ferdy smitten and both love-struck, Suzie's love connection proves a stellar success, and that makes it so she can make proper introductions with her fella, Greg.
Hi.
Hi.
Talk about the height of romance, and sprung from such simplicity.
Oh, hello.
Suddenly the whole world is a sauna because things are getting so steamy among this quad of couples.
It's been nice for me too, Ferdy.
Oh, God!
It's always nice when there's some forced voyeurism sprinkled in. It's also always nice to consider that the sale price showroom mattress you're getting for a steal could have been consummated.
Oh, God! You're the king! You're the king!
No longer hindered by having to kowtow to technicians that don't understand the nuances of security work the way these mindless robots do.
Going online. Level 2.
The protectors go on shift, and so begins things going awry for the horn dogs. When one of the couples ends up targeted for, well, I'll just say it, termination. Talk about giving head. The rampaging killbots are only part of the problem.
What was that?
The cracked system isn't only actively attacking, it implements an all but inescapable form of bondage.
That's the sound of us being locked in here all night.
Suzie has maybe faced too little adversity. At the first sign of trouble, she has zero faith they will survive.
Oh, no! We're never gonna get out of here!
Yes, we are.
Greg dashes that kind of pessimism with a resolute attitude, but that doesn't change that they are subject to laser attack. The guys gallantly get the ladies into the vents and to safety. Only to get separated from their dates by the sudden bombardment of what, under different circumstances, would be a pretty sweet psychedelic light show.
I thought this was an air conditioning. Looks like the heat's been turned on.
The ladies knew their evening was likely to involve exploring shafts, but this is ridiculous.
They know we're in here. They're trying to French fry us. Come on, Suze.
Unfortunately, all the encouragement in the world won't change that she's terrified to her core. Fear is insidious, because it will kick rationale out of some of life's most important internal conversations.
I gotta find Greg. He needs me.
There are those who can go crawling around narrow caves and mine shafts without issue.
Let me out of here. Suzie, please.
And there are those who start perspiring in a slow elevator. Whether or not Suzie knew that she fits the bill of a typical sufferer of claustrophobia before she was crawling through a confined space is immaterial. What matters is that she's getting battered by the effects now.
The guys told us to go down to the parking levels.
That's reason. Suzie is operating in the confines of a tight space, not those of rational thought, since reason would make the current squeeze unbearable, because it would assert how counterintuitive it is to leave safety, even if it means open spaces.
Suzie, stop it! Please. Greg needs me.
Able to facilitate friend dynamics with the ease of a social butterfly, her worst instincts prove harder to manage.
I know he does.
Suzie is so determined to make a quantifiably bad decision. From the outset, they are at an insurmountable impasse. Because there's no stopping the unbendable young lady. Meanwhile, one of their arch rivals is out prowling. Not entirely guileless. In fact, cleverer than its plain exterior would imply. Protector number 2 takes up a position to lie in wait, like a hungry predator patient enough to wait out prey. Although that's probably attributing too much to a simple machine. Or is it?
Really, you guys, this is not a good idea. Bullshit!
Even if it would seem her good sense has been commandeered, Suzie has an objective in mind and won't be dissuaded.
Greg could be hurt. They all could. I'm gonna find them.
Such selflessness is commendable to a point, but they are racing headlong into jeopardy.
I've got to. What do you think? Well...
At least, in theory, the ladies will prove resourceful.
If we gotta go, let's not go empty-handed.
They make some improvised explosives, going the Molotov cocktail route of using a propellant and fire.
I'm not sure I can do this. It's okay, Susan.
Is it bravery to instigate actions she doubts she can do? Once thrust into a life-and-death situation, a person can learn quickly they don't necessarily have what it takes to survive. But that doesn't change that they have no choice other than to try. Brave or not, that's admirable. Suzie going off like a fire alarm signals to the guys that the ladies have left the air shaft. So they will surely turn up in time to make a difference. Clearly moving too quickly for them to scatter and confuse it by forcing it to make a choice. They stay relatively close to each other as they implement their plan. For not really being types usually tasked with fighting tooth and nail for sake of survival. Their impromptu preparation seems solid. Until fire proves a poor weapon against something with a steel chassis. The tank-like wheels with continuous track design definitely makes counterattack on these things difficult. Despite quick thinking that seemed promising, they are outmatched, but luckily help is fast approaching. With the killbot steamrolling its way in their direction, time is of the essence, especially since it has no problem taking pot shots. The scattershot approach pays dividends. To great expense to the most important aspect of Suzie's portfolio, her physical being. Damn Einstein, one well-placed laser beam, and she's incapacitated, and at the mercy of the rampaging killbot. The bridge from making good memories to the worst experience of your life can be a short jaunt over a deep chasm. There's something so visceral and arresting about the image of a mindless machine bearing down on a cowering victim, as she pleads for help that isn't coming.
We've gotta help her!
Thank you, and have a nice day.
What the blazes? The Deathbot plays a reverse Uno card. If that wasn't the definition of a plan backfiring, I don't know what qualifies. Since Flesh and Blood Suzie isn't equipped with a protective shell, she's screwed, and not in the good way. Talk about getting French fried. In retrospect, that sweaty air shaft probably doesn't seem so repellent. But then she thought she could help Greg, not for a second truly believing her life was on the line, or that she could go up like a struck match head. Suzie just wanted a fiery night, full of hot experiences, but again, this is ridiculous. Arriving too late to save Suzie, the fellas appear just in time to see, and probably smell, things that will mark them for the remainder of their lives, however brief that might be. With his lady broiled, Greg is seeing bright red, and it has nothing to do with lasers. Regardless, bullets are no match for laser beams. With little choice other than to flee, they make their escape, leaving poor Suzie smoldering on the floor. Besides being a real scorcher of a death sequence, concluding with a young woman going up like the Wicker Man, what makes this exit extraordinary? Yes, 1980s dancing and its tangential prevalence in the era. Nope, some tangents need to wait for a different day.
Well, I'm sincerely glad to hear that, for all our sakes.
In very relatable terms, the lead up to Suzie's exit shows how the human component, the emotions that drive us, can prove too big of an obstacle to overcome, and also how such emotionality, when pitted against the relentlessness of an unfeeling killbot, will never benefit the one hampered with fear, maybe most exemplified by Suzie's inability to stop screaming, when all of her focus should have been on protecting her skin.
If you get my drift.
What this indicates is that Suzie was a victim of her own good life. Charismatic, vivacious, and beautiful.
I see how you can make a weak man stupid.
Thank you.
Suzie enjoyed the benefit of magnetic qualities, which indeed tends to make for a good life. In her case, a life that instilled a belief that heroics would be rewarded to a degree worthy of taking stupid and unnecessary risks, when in reality, heroics oftentimes lead to doom, the final lesson of her short life.
Oh, go to hell!
Foolhardiness born of fear is hard to mock or even look down upon. You don't really know what you're made of until you're put to the test. Some people are comprised primarily of sugar and spice and everything nice, but that doesn't mean there's not also some vinegar and spit and polishing grit. Probably because of her high status in life, she was deluded into believing that forsaking safety was a reasonable response, not realizing she was putting herself on the sacrificial spit for a thorough flame broiling, and all for nothing.
Aren't you being a little cynical?
She had no business being out there by the reckoning of the person she most wanted to protect. I would assume the majority of boyfriends and husbands would prefer their woman seek safety. Greg didn't need help, and even if he did, because he was imbued with the typical male spirit of the time, that of blind valor on behalf of protecting those of the opposite sex, especially one's own lady, a spirit that lives on today in a diminished capacity. He didn't want her to risk getting her goose cooked on his behalf. What was an unambiguous indicator of her privilege? The entitlement she exhibited at every turn established that she was used to getting her way, bulldozing others to exert her will, from forcing blind dates to kicking her way through the vent opening. Not only did her insistence put her friends at greater risk from the killbots, it created an awkward exchange when outraged Greg later addressed the elephant in the room.
Tell me one thing though, huh?
Forcing an explanation for a situation the others wanted to avoid.
Why did you leave the air shaft?
And were coaxed into by Suzie's persistence.
And you were safe there.
It seemed like no reasoning would supplicate him at that point.
You were safe.
His mind was made up that they had contributed to the awful decision that cost Suzie her life.
Suzie thought you were in trouble. She just wanted to help.
The worst thing she could have said to him, it only reinforced his resolve to assign blame.
I'm telling you, you should have kept her there.
What were they supposed to do? Physically restrain her from leaving the air shaft? If they didn't go with her, he would be blaming them for leaving her alone. Ferdy had to step in on his date's behalf and risk the wrath of an infuriated young man.
Look, she told you what happened. Why didn't you just leave her alone?
Shut up.
In need of quick diffusing, due to grief, Greg might have been temporarily insane.
You just shut the fuck up! Hey.
It's a very human desire to allocate blame. He wasn't able to take into account the rationale, or lack thereof, that actually decided that whole scenario. Unless you're pointing a gun at someone, you can't make them do anything, and maybe not even then.
I'll tell you what, Ski King. Why don't you just take your mama home some chicken, and then I won't have to stuff my boot all up in your ass.
In the moment, it would be inconceivable how focused the blame truly was. That it could all, very sadly, be laid at Suzie's feet.
I can't stand this anymore.
She was the one who quickly succumbed to her worst instincts, and was the only one advocating for leaving the air shaft.
I gotta get out of here. I gotta get out of here.
Whether or not they joined her, Suzie was bound and determined to get out, no matter how much she was persuaded otherwise.
Come on, Suze. Hang in there.
They were really in a no-win situation, because they couldn't convince her with words, but nor could they use force. There was really nothing they could do, so knowing all that, it's impossible to paint them as the bad guys. The problem was all that would come second-hand, and that meant Gray just had to take their word for it.
Hey. You guys mind keeping it down?
Thank goodness a voice of reason emerged, and prevented the situation from spiraling. Exploiting the modern bugaboo of technological advancement run amok, the film also demonstrates the perils of blindly trusting such powerful tech, and depending on it not to fail, because the alternative could mean disaster. This hint at greater implications makes a clever variation on slashers even more interesting. On some level, all horror films exist as cautionary tales, usually directed towards a subset of the populace, such as the young people who made up the film's victim pool.
In about an hour and a half, we bail this barbecue, and it's good times to the max.
By presenting malfunctioning robots as the aggressors, laser-equipped droids that could be deployed anywhere, the underlying warning becomes far more universal, suggesting all need to be leery of what is being used for policing. The question becomes, at what point is excessive too excessive?
I know you bastards are going to be trouble when I first brought you in here.
Why does this have a bearing? Let me pose this. How are these robots more cost-effective than a properly trained and paid security staff? I say properly paid because if they were underpaid, it would invite theft from the very ones tasked with preventing it. When you factor in the cost of technicians, it would seem the expense of the robots was quite steep, especially after paying out for the lawsuits. What was the justification? How much merchandise was possibly getting stolen at night? What did they cost in the first place? How many years would they need to be in operation before they paid for themselves? This would suggest the higher-ups had a desire to over-police, with plausible deniability that can't exist with human security guards.
The system is absolutely foolproof.
So, ultimately, why did the protectors get manufactured? The real reason.
They seem so violent. If they're called protectors, what do they protect?
The killbots, which is what they were even if they could be set to stun, existed as a perfect analogy for a major mechanism that props up capitalism and the elite, showing how money buys the height of technology for the purpose of being used to keep the working class in line. From swords to spears, and firearms to laser-shooting robots, it's all the same. Sure, ostensibly the protectors were built as a means of security against the criminal element, but they could easily be turned against a populace.
And how can your things there distinguish between the good guys and the bad guys?
Could you imagine these things dispersed on city streets, taking down curfew breakers like they're hardened criminals? They could certainly be more effective than the Ed 209 model. They would at least know their limitations. Not to mention these bots definitely seem like precursors in the timeline to the robot drones Skynet was using to conquer humanity. This message is as relevant today as ever, since modern drones are insanely advanced, able to pinpoint very small targets. It all comes down to who's in charge of the apparatus. It's all a slippery slope, and getting slipperier by the day.
God help us!
Yes, sirree. This means of boosting up the insatiable beast of capitalism by protecting merchandise and profits at all costs.
I don't know, that guy looked awfully dead to me.
Ended up having an extremely detrimental effect on the human side of the equation. Was it bad behavior, partying in the furniture store after closing and having sex on beds that were certainly for display and possibly for sale?
I seem to recall it from one sleep.
Which is pretty gross. That sealed Suzie and the others' fates? The 1980s would have us believe that any good time was a surefire way to end up in a life or death situation, and usually for no good reason pertaining to anything you specifically did, beyond the customary array of sex and vice and throwing caution into the wind for sake of pleasure. And that would be the case here, because even if it was questionable behavior, such a draconian approach to law and order had, nor has, yet to be implemented.
Trust me, absolutely nothing can go wrong.
This all did an exemplary job of showing the pointlessness of it all, the uselessness of every death in this film, since they all result from a devastating glitch, but a glitch just the same. Random chance at its worst. This all plays into the fact that life is unfair, sometimes even for the pretty people. But for some minor happenstance like a random malfunction, your life can be turned upside down and ended for no reason at all. From heart-stopping power shorts to parts subject to recall failing on the freeway leading to catastrophe, in the real world this can happen in a variety of ways. No laser shooting robots required.
Yep, that stands up to scrutiny.
Suzie just wanted everybody to have a good time, and for that she was punished in one of the most heinous ways imaginable. Burned alive like a martyr from another century, condemned as a witch, set ablaze for crimes as minimal as, well, those that got actual so-called witches fricasseed. A common horror theme is exemplified particularly well in Suzie, that bad luck can befall anybody. Suzie seemed destined to have a good life, until fate intervened with a bolt of lightning. With malls in their death knell, the level of security exhibited in shopping malls seems particularly absurd, when even the Monroeville Mall, near and dear to all our hearts in the horror realm, due to its inclusion in legendary George Romero's Dawn of the Dead.
When there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk here.
Has been purchased by the Walmart Corporation and is scheduled for demolition, the former prevalence of mole culture seems a distant memory. Back in the day, I don't think they realized that moles would ultimately be a passing phenomenon, enshrining them in films as if they wouldn't one day date them terribly as time capsules of a simpler era of food courts and arcades and stores as far as the eye can see. A lasting phenomenon still working today, Suzie was played by horror icon Barbara Crampton, a role that demonstrates how she put in the work to reach her hallowed status in the genre. Known for her scintillating performances in the films of Stuart Gordon, she was really put through the ringer in this one, requiring a sustained period of emotional output. Anyone who thinks acting in horror is somehow lesser need only look to her performance here to dispute that notion. The way she conveyed fear sold that Suzie would make decisions so contradictory to her feelings.
That's very simple.
Well, I've about reached the end of the rope, so I won't leave you dangling. Thanks for humoring my postulations. Please share any refutations, opinions, accusations, japes, or other ideas in the comments below. And please join me for whatever I'm up to next time. Bye now!
Bye, creepy man! Keep it creepy!
He's a weird guy.
Goodbye!